Welcome pals to a new video. As of this recording date, in 2 days time, the October edition of Ludum Dare or Ludum Dare, the very popular online game jam, will be starting. I will be entering, and if you don't currently enter game jams, this video is going to be about explaining to you why you should be doing that. If you do participate in game jams, then this video will be about how to get the most out of your game jam experience. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Game jams. What is a game jam? A game jam is a contest where participants try to make a game from scratch, says Wikipedia. Essentially, it is a very short period of time, usually 2 days to a week, where a theme is given, most commonly, and participants aim to make a game that meets that theme in the allotted time. They usually don't know the theme in advance. After the initial period is over, usually there is a voting period where people take the time to play other people's games, give them feedback and scores, and the ones with the highest scores get some kind of recognition or award. So, I personally love game jams. I've been participating in these since 2014. And I think they're incredibly useful to the process of learning game development, maintaining a sharp skill set if you are a game developer, and just basically getting more involved in the game dev community. If you're not convinced, here are some additional reasons. 1, it's fun. 2, it's productive. If you're putting together a resume or you're just looking to experiment with different mechanics, game jams are an excellent excuse to actually just make something, because usually that thing will be finished in 2 days. What other thing can you claim gives you that kind of value? 2 days of work and you get a finished project on your resume? It's awesome. They are low stakes. So, if you spend 2 or 3 days making a game and it turns out to be crappy, well, what did you lose? You lost a weekend. What were you going to do anyway? You were just going to play Age of Empires online and just lose a bunch of ranking points anyway. So that's what I tell myself. 4, they're communal. Game jams allow you to get in contact with other developers. Many of these are team events, and so you can meet up with new people and make games with them. Maybe they'll help you make some bigger game that you're working on if they have a different skill set to you. Maybe you'll make some new friends who vote on your game and whose games you vote on. They are also very insightful. So you get an insight into your own development process, right? You get feedback about what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong in your design process, and you get a much more short-term cadence on that feedback. The more game jams you participate in, the faster you can diagnose what it is you might be missing and what you can do to improve your games to make them more fun, right? Games usually are very long endeavors. They take a long time, and you put a lot of effort into getting them to a point where other people can play them. And if you wait until your game is done before people get to play them, then you don't know if you're making some sort of design error. So game jams, very small, very high feedback, very low commitment. They're an excellent way of sharpening your design skills. Now, personally, I have been entering game jams since 2014, and my entire process of learning Unity, understanding the engine, and becoming a better developer has basically been chronicled by my entries into game jams. Now, not all of these have been massive successes, and even the most recent entries have had some pretty big flaws in them. And I want to cover today what I've gotten out of this process, some of the games that I've made, and particularly what you can do to avoid making mistakes and actually do to get the most out of your experience. So the first game jam I participated in was Ludum Dare in 2014. It was number 30, and I made this game called Big Fish, Little Fish. I didn't really understand how to use Unity very well, and so I was using this to sort of like teach myself a little bit more, maybe experiment with things. I remember I used the physics chain, like a hinge joint tool for the first time, and I used that to create the bones for the fish. It was a horrible mess of a game. It was not fun. It was totally broken, totally unplayable. But there were some pretty nice points. I think I got like 150th rated in graphics, which was kind of cool for my first game jam. And it was inspiring for me to want to try to do a better job next time. These are not the only games that I've produced for Ludum Dare. I've basically done a few, but many of these I didn't submit. So the next one that I submitted was called Inhabitants. This was a much more comfortable game for me to make. I used processing instead of Unity. which I was much more comfortable with. It's Java based. And I made a game that was much simpler. It was a puzzle game, sort of like Conway's Game of Life. You're placing humans and trees on the tiles, and there's kind of like a balancing act because they both need each other to survive. And so you had to fill the map without them running out of resources. It was just very, very simple. And I managed to finish it. You know, you can see a nice little UI here. It was very much a success. And I was rated better for this game, right? I improved in graphics in each of the areas, basically. Following that was a game called Contraband. Contraband was much, much more recent. I didn't participate in Ludum Dare for a couple of years between those two. And this one was way more ambitious. This was a game that had like 4 different genres packed into one. It was like a top-down game that transitioned into a platformer that had wall jumping and sword combat. It also then introduced, time pressures and lasers, and it was like trying to do so much. And I managed to finish it and submit it, and it did pretty well. It was rated 141st overall, but was totally overambitious. And, I was kind of embarrassed at how difficult I made the game. I wasn't really able to tune the game to be something that was very fun. People were very frustrated with it. Following that was a game this is kind of like the best entry I've ever submitted. This was called Remember Apollo. It was a very simple game. Again, much, much more comfortable after the last game. All I did was I designed this one mechanic. It was kind of like an Angry Birds style, like slingshot mechanic, and I made this platformer out of it. It was very simple. I told a lot of the story with graphics. There was a little bit of text, but that was about it. It was just this platforming thing with some text and graphics and a nice smoke sort of background effect that I created, just like this procedural effect. And that got 22nd overall. It actually got, I think it was 10th or 11th in graphics, and top 20 for mood as well. It was really good in terms of the score that I got, and the feedback was really positive as well. I was very happy with this entry. And finally, the most recent entry that I submitted was for Ludum Dare 48, which was the last Ludum Dare. And this was called Throneless. This was a isometric tactics RPG in 48 hours. This was another hugely overambitious idea. And I had been playing around with isometric stuff. You guys have seen the isometric videos on my channel. And I had worked out some pathfinding stuff, and I was really keen to pack them into a game in 48 hours. I was also planning on taking this further. So with Apollo, I actually turned this into a mobile game called Arrowbound, and that's available on Android. I was so pleased with the idea. And I was kind of going into this jam hoping to do the same thing. So in my mind, I knew that the concept was bigger than Ludum Dare, and unfortunately, having that scope baked in put me in a position where it was very difficult to polish something of this size by the time the jam was over. And to that end, I submitted the game, but it really didn't have the sound that I wanted. It had like one soundtrack at the very beginning. It was very unoptimized and very slow. And I wasn't really happy with getting feedback on it. So I submitted it, but I submitted it as unfinished. It's finishable, but I just wasn't comfortable with it. Part of this has to do with, I suppose, my conceptions of myself as a developer. Since 2020 had a much bigger audience, and I felt a bit embarrassed that I was submitting something that I knew the feedback would be negative for, and that I knew that the feedback would be obvious, right? There were obvious reasons why I thought people would struggle with this game. It didn't really show up in any of the browsing. You can't really find it unless you search for unfinished games. Since that time, I've had a bit of a change of heart on what I should have done. I don't think I'm going to be submitting a game like this again for Ludum Dare. I think that my objectives here were unclear, or at least not harmonious with the spirit of what it is to do a game jam. And there are many things that you can do and objectives that you can have going into a game jam. And I want to cover those very quickly because I think this is kind of the secret sauce to making sure that you always have a good time. Game jams are an excellent opportunity to make something that's fun. They're also an excellent opportunity to test yourself and an opportunity to learn. But they are seldomly all of those things at the same time. This is a scale that I've created, okay? The scale has on one end trying new things, and on the other hand, making something that's great. Because making a fun game, right, usually involves having some kind of expertise or excellence in what it is that you're working with. But if you're trying new things, the chances are the first thing that you make will not be excellent, or it will take longer to actually refine it into something that's fun. So whether you're a beginner or an expert, there's lots of opportunity for you here. Let's talk about very quickly some of these things and where they sit on the scale. So let's just say that you're a super duper beginner, right? You've never really done game dev before. Maybe you're an artist and you're learning how to program. Maybe you've learned some Unity. If you're learning an engine, this is peak trying new things, right? You really can't expect to make something that is going to win the jam as far as being voted on. But you can still make something fun and you can still learn a lot, right? This is an awesome reason to be entering a game jam. But your expectations should be low. And as such, the scope of what you make should be low as well. Like, try not to be over ambitious about what it is you're making. And this kind of cascades down into the different parts of development too. So let's say you know a little bit about Unity, but you've only really done puzzle games. Well, if you're looking to expand that into platforming, there are going to be features of Unity, like the physics system, that you've never experienced before. And so you'll have some familiarity, but there'll still be new things. Again, you won't really be able to make a game that's going to win the jam unless you keep your scope very constrained and you sort of happen upon a very excellent, very elegant idea that doesn't require a lot of technical proficiency. And we can follow this scale along to the other end. Okay, so the other end is making something great and making something that other people find fun. This is for more advanced developers usually. And the reasons why is because these have less to do with learning and more to do with practice, okay? These are like testing your time management skills, flexing your skills, so actually making the most out of what you're good at and putting that into a game in a small package. So more about value. And then there's min-maxing production and fun. So how can I actually show off my best skills, make something that's finished and also that's fun and original, right? This is basically, if you're going to win, this is the kind of thing that you need to be prepared to be doing. The cost of this for experienced developers is, generally speaking, this is like a difference between for you versus for other people, right? If you're looking to win and there's a theme, you can't really go into the jam expecting to make a game that you've wanted to make in the past, right? Because it might not fit the theme. Likewise, you know, if you have a specific genre of game, maybe you want to make a platformer, but the theme doesn't fit that, or the game that you start making sort of reveals itself to not really be best implemented as a platformer. You know, not being flexible on that is actually going to cost you. And so, am I doing this for me and because I want to make a game, or am I doing this to win? And if I take this and I look at the entries that I've submitted, you can see here that like every second one is on the other end of the spectrum. And my experience with the jams, how I feel about these entries, has really come down to whether or not I was comfortable with the direction that I chose. The two games that I've had the most fun in are Inhabitants and Apollo. With those two games, I got the best feedback for where I was at as a developer, and I got good results too. And ultimately, the other ones, right? Each of these times where I tried to make something that was more ambitious, that was more for me, and didn't get the feedback that I wanted, it always upset me. So it's clear to me, obviously now, like 5-10 years later, that I'm clearly somebody who cares about using these as an opportunity to push myself, right? And to get the best rating that I can. That's not to say that you shouldn't be doing the other, that you shouldn't be using it as an opportunity to learn, but you need to be sure that if you're going through this and you know that you're using Ludum Dare or a game jam as a learning opportunity, not to get disheartened, you know, when the game that comes out either doesn't fit the theme or gets some negative feedback, because it's for you, right? Doing things like not obeying the time constraints by making your scope too big, or by not obeying the theme by making a game that's off theme. There's no right or wrong here, but you may not win. That's the only thing. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is that I actually record every jam that I enter, and I usually stream every jam I enter as I do it. Okay, so for the last 3 years, I actually have like full 48-hour videos of every second of the design process, including the prep time the day before, because I'm a streamer and that's what I do. So I think I'm in an excellent position to share with you guys the things that I've learned looking back at those recordings and the process that I've developed along the way. So, leading up to a game jam, this is usually where I start, okay? In the days prior, I will create maybe some kind of mood board that reflects the graphical tone that I'm interested in exploring, right? As an artist, as somebody who makes games as a solo developer, I find that day to day, working on Insignia, I'm working with the same palette, with the same sort of visual style. And so one thing that I do like to use game jams as an opportunity for is to actually try to work out new styles and new directions. So I'm going for, maybe for this jam, something more minimalist. At least I might start with that as a direction. So I'll put together a little bit of a mood board to try to give me some kind of creative inspiration for things that I can do. And I might even open up Sprite and create some palettes or some fake screenshots for games that I think would be minimal enough to work for a game jam. The next thing I do is I try to consolidate some objectives. Okay, and you can see here, I've got a few of these from previous jams. So each of these 2 blocks here have lessons from the previous jam and objectives for this jam. Okay, and it's really important to me that I track those because how I do later reflects how well I kept to my objectives here. So you can see here, I think this was for Apollo, following on Contraband. So I had just made a really complicated game and I wanted to make a game that was simpler. I first went back to the Ludum Dare jam page for the game and I read the feedback. So here we are on the Contraband jam page. You can see there's the ratings, here are the comments. There were tons of comments, tons of feedback. And I went through and I tabulated this feedback, right, and consolidated it into something that was representative of, generally speaking, what are people saying about this game, okay? So you can see here, what are the lessons that I've learned? So this is from the feedback. The feedback that I got was that it was a bit difficult, was that there was too much going on and people didn't get to finish the game. I felt that the game didn't do as well as I thought it could from the graphics department, and I felt like I didn't have time. So show your strengths was basically me telling myself, prioritize graphics, because that's what I wanted to do. Polish, there were some bugs in the game. Some people got stuck or couldn't finish because of the bugs. So I wanted to prioritize polish. And create a moment just means make the game more memorable. Try to focus the production values around one specific thing, whether it's the moment when a mechanic clicks or something that's memorable, basically because I think that does better. I thought about like ways that I could strategize to actually implement those things for the next jam. So something like optional difficulty, maybe branching paths, having the game be finishable before the 12th hour for production and time management, dedicate time to the things that you want to do and stick to a schedule, and then validate the designs against the things that we care about, okay? And I broke those down into 3 categories. So the 3 things that I need to do better was employ player empathy, better time management, and better design method. That was my critical feedback to myself. And then I worked on Apollo the next day, and I produced a game that I feel really, really does represent those things. This is Apollo, and basically you just pull on the thing to fling yourself across the screen, and you're just connecting these nodes. This game is so much simpler. It requires much less tutorialization. Once you start, you know exactly how to play it, and generally speaking, it's just a lot simpler of a game, right? That makes it more playable. And it allowed me to spend more time on backgrounds, which I was more comfortable doing. And it allowed the submission to be stronger overall. So this game was much, much better rated, got much, much better feedback than Contraband. And I believe that's because I was committed to following those objectives. So I think, spending the time actually focusing on reflecting on your previous jam before you start, if you've ever done a previous jam, is really important into getting yourself into the headspace into, the next time you're going to be doing it. If you have time trouble, which I definitely do, one thing that I do is I make sure, because I record all of my jams, I can go back and watch them. So you might not be able to do this, but I think it's a good testament to why you should stream your jam process or record it at the very least. We're going to go and check out one of my jam entries, the last one, Throneless, right now. So this is the stream from Throneless. And what I'd love to show you is this little thing in the corner that I made. I spent some time doing some HTML wizardry to create this little timeline. And I had kind of like a time budget for each of the development parts. So I had like some time budget for art, programming, design, that kind of thing. Okay. And as I scrub across, you can watch the time fill up. Okay. So we can actually see what I was supposed to be doing and what I actually did. Now you'll have to be a little bit patient with me because this goes across 2 videos, but basically if we scrub across, you can see what I was supposed to be doing. Like say here at hour 21, we're supposed to be doing design. I'm still doing code, okay? Putting prototype graphics in. At this point, hour 24, I should be doing art. I'm still doing code, okay? There's a little bit of art going on, not a lot, still writing code. Okay, now we should be doing art, should be doing art, should be doing art. Do I get to it? Finally, like 2 hours into the art budget, I start putting some art in the game. I rush that out. And then now I should be doing sound. Okay, it's now the 30th hour. I'm doing art. Still doing art. Still doing art for UI. Should be doing sound. No sound. Completely missed the sound budget because I was doing graphics. And then playtesting. Still haven't done any sound. Still more code, more UI. Now I'm doing sound when I should be sleeping. Still doing art. This is the polish phase. I think at this point, like I had some of the major mechanics in and I had something that was close to being finishable, but you couldn't actually play the game. And this actually really, really plagued me trying to submit the game. The goal was have it be a thing that's finished and completed at the beginning so that whenever you have to stop, when time runs out, at least the game's done. But it wasn't. So you can see the last hour here where I'm rushing to put a title screen and an ending on it. I'm just really, really defeated, and a lot of the quality drops here. This is where the optimization issues creeped in and the ending had to be really rushed. I just didn't have the time worked out because I set the bar so high. So looking at Throneless, when I compare that to the actual notes that I had for Throneless, you can see that I didn't actually prioritize time. Nothing in this description of what I wanted to do for this jam that involved like making sure I get it done quickly and making sure that it's tight and packaged and that the scope was small, because I'd been intending on making this thing a bigger mobile game and spending a few months on it after. And that really hurt me, right? I didn't set a goal, so I didn't achieve the goal. Now the problem there is in this, what we call like cognitive dissonance, right? In like psychology, where sure, I said that I didn't want to finish it or didn't care about finishing it, right? It wasn't a priority, but I was still really upset when I didn't. So obviously it was important to me. I think I was just a little bit optimistic, a little bit dishonest with myself about what I thought I could get done and how it would affect me if I didn't get it done. So just something for you guys to take as like a cautionary tale. But also, obviously, coming back to the point, is being able to watch that actually take place in video is really valuable, right? It really proves that this is the case without having to, speculate. Like we know where I spent my time and you can tell why very, very clearly. And I think this is like one of the most important things. And it's also something that is very, very difficult to do outside of a game jam environment. In normal day-to-day game dev, the games are much bigger. It's really hard to track your time and to track your objectives and how those are plotted over time and whether or not you've done something fast enough or estimated it correctly. That's so hard to do in normal game dev. In a game jam setting, it's only in 48 hours. So your ability to project manage like that, it's laid out in the most clear way possible, especially if you record everything. So before you get into a jam, here is a quick checklist of things that I think that you should do. Make sure you start a new project in whatever engine that you will be using. So make an empty, clean project and make sure you do that the night before. You can also import any tools that you'll be expecting to use, any packages that you'll be using for your game. Also set up a Git repo, right? Nobody wants to lose all of their project work. If you don't know what version control is or Git, now is an excellent time to try it out. Make sure you get lots of sleep the night before. If you're planning on doing an all-nighter, please be responsible with that. Sometimes, spending an all-nighter on something will leave you so dazed the next day that you won't have time to actually submit properly, and the quality of your work will decrease. So be careful with all-nighters. Maybe make sure that you tell a loved one that you'll be doing a game jam and have them bring you food. And that's the last one. Have food prepared and maybe clean clothes. Do some laundry the day before. Now, during the jam, make sure you spend time at the very beginning developing your idea. If it's a 2-day game jam, spend like an hour and a half at the beginning, actually thinking of different ideas. Don't just have one idea. Have like 6 and let them develop. Your first idea is not always going to be your best one, but if you do like 5 or 6, you'll probably end up with something that you'll be more proud to work on. Don't panic. This is something that you're doing for you ultimately, and if you don't get the result that you want, there's always next time. Like, there's no stakes here, remember, right? You're not playing for your life. You're just doing it to have fun. If you are in a bind, try to cut your losses. Try to make the project smaller. If you plan to do 10 levels and you can get the game in a fun state with 5 levels, just let it be 5, right? No one's going to know what your plan was. All they're going to know is what you finished with. Make sure you give yourself time to submit. It sucks when you have something that's so close to being done, but just needed 3 or 4 more hours, but you don't have 3 or 4 more hours, right? That really sucks. And it's one of the biggest challenges of game jams, but is something that's usually quite inflexible. Most jams don't let you update your submission, outside of like a couple of minutes of the submission period. Now, what about after the jam? What should you be doing? So first thing you should do is congratulate yourself. You made something that didn't exist before, all by yourself. And that's awesome, and you're awesome, so congrats. Second is play other people's games and rate them, right? This is a really important process, and it gives you usually a really good sense of where you're at relative to other developers. Some of the things that I've learned about making games have come from playing other people's games after a game jam, seeing which parts I appreciated more versus what I thought players would appreciate when I was working on my game. Okay, that's really important. Next is check in on your feedback. Listen to what people are saying and try not to get too anxious about it, okay? It's always positive. It's only going to help you to read feedback and to take it into clear consideration. Once you've understood the feedback, try to summarize it, put it in a format that you can easily refer to next time. And finally, keep working on it, right? If you've made something and it's fun and it's good, maybe you can make it a full-sized game, right? There's no actual reason why you can't keep making the game. You just can't submit it again for the jam. So go for it. If you stumble into something that's awesome, keep going. There are tons of actually really popular games that started as game jam games. These are games like Goat Simulator and Surgeon Simulator, Super Hot, Bubba Is You, The Last Night, and Screen Cheat. These are all games that started as game jam games, and they're all very popular. So hey, maybe you'll stumble on your next $1 million idea in a game jam. So if you've been convinced by this video and you're looking to get a start making a game in a game jam very soon, you should consider entering Ludum Dare. It's this weekend. I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be streaming the whole time as I do. So you can put my stream on the side and feel like you're working in the same office as me. And we're all going to have a lot of fun. So hopefully I'll see you there. Have a great weekend. And until next time. Hey pal, thanks for watching, and thanks most especially to the patrons and Twitch subs who support this channel and my game dev project Insignia. To find out more, click the links in the description below. And if you like this video, tell YouTube by clicking the like button, and then YouTube will tell me, and then I'll make more videos. That's nice. Thanks again, and until next time.